Now let's begin session 2. The theme for session 2 is price mechanism favorable and sustainable for both producers and consumers of LNG. So the moderator for this session 2 is Dr. Koyama, the Senior Managing Director and also Chief Economist of the Institute of Energy Economics Japan. Dr. Koyama, please take the floor.
And good afternoon and good evening to all those who are participating in this panel discussion from different parts of the world with different time zones. My name is Ken Koyama of IEJ. I'm very happy and honored to play a role as the moderator of today's discussion on LNG pricing in Asian market. I'm a great believer that LNG is going to play an increasingly important role in the global energy mix, in particular in Asian energy mix as a clean energy and abundant energy sources to address 3E challenge for Asia. But of course, there are several issues that the LNG industry or LNG stakeholder need to overcome to see that LNG is actually playing that expected role for the future. And one of the key issues is, of course, that pricing. Today, we are now going to make a great discussion with this topic with such a wonderful members of the panelists. We have 5 distinguished panelists from LNG industry, from consuming side and producing side. And as we have the very detailed CV and bio, I do not go into detail, but I have wonderful, as I mentioned, I have a wonderful member, including Sato-san of JERA, and Tsugaru-san of Mitsubishi Corporation, and Vivier-san from Total, and Sham-san from Petronas, and Feigin-san from Cheniere. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I really appreciate your agreement, you agreeing to join the panel, and I hope that I myself would like to enjoy today's discussion. As I mentioned, I really believe that LNG is going to play a bigger role, particularly in Asia. And in Asia, we have Japan, Korea, Taiwan, so-called the traditional energy importing and consuming country. Japan, Korea, Taiwan continue to play a very important role for the future. But at the same time, we are seeing that LNG demand growth is coming from the emerging Asian market, such as China, India, ASEAN countries, and South Asian countries. To see the sound and steady development and growth in LNG market here in Asia, we need to understand what is happening now in our industry. Traditional LNG is still alive, but we are seeing a more diversified, new emerging players and new emerging business style, including the issue related to the pricing. As everybody knows, that the LNG pricing, particularly for traditional market, is dominated by crude oil indexation, known as JCC. But at the same time, we are seeing the growing diversified some style of contract or style of business. And we are seeing that the new pricing mechanisms such as US LNG based on Henry Hub pricing and other spot pricing is now emerging. What is the pros and cons of this pricing, which is based on the market fundamental? This is a great topic of today's discussion. As a first round of discussion, I'd like to invite each of the panelists to speak for about 5 minutes with presentation material or without, it's up to you. But to kick off start, I prepared a kind of warm-up question to each of you. Now let's start with the first one, and I'd like to invite Sato-san. And Sato-san, for you, the warm-up question is like this. Now we are seeing that a kind of LNG price index which can reflect the demand-supply condition in Asia or in the region. What do you expect from this new emergence of the price index reflecting supply-demand fundamental? Sato-san, please.
Thank you, Koyama-san. My answer is very simple.
Oh.
According to the basic theory of economics, single product, single commodity should have single price with the certain criteria of standard. As Koyama-san pointed out, yes, the Asian market is leading the current energy market globally. And from now on, the Asian market will play more important role for the coming future.
Yes.
In spite of that, Asian energy market is very premature stage at this moment because we don't have any price index for LNG itself. Mainstream linked to oil, some others Henry Hub, TTF, NBP, or JKM as well, but no single index. So we should try best effort to introduce such kind of the first energy index in the world. That is a mission for Asian energy players. Could you show my slide? Next page. If we have the same pricing index, we can encourage the flow of the commodity of LNG inside Asia. For example, recently, some countries suffered from the overcommitment. They import LNG with oil linked. But in case they sell to the market, they have to sell with JKM. So the price gap is a very big risk for the trading business in the Asian market. But if we have the common index, no need to worry about the price index gap. Of course, the timing gap is still there, but the index gap is no more. So definitely it will encourage the flow of LNG inside Asia. Furthermore, could you show the next slide? I think that in the world, there are 3 global markets, Europe, Asia, and North America. So North America and the European market has each index. That is not for LNG, but gas index, respectively. But if we, Asia, will have LNG index with certain differential among these authorized index, we can establish a global flow of LNG. So definitely it will contribute to the brilliant future of our industry. That is my philosophy. Is it simple?
It's a great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And actually, I'm also the great believer as an economist that commodity pricing is based on that supply demand of that specific commodity. That's theoretically correct. And actually, in the real world, there are several issues that we need to discuss.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sato-san. And now I'd like to ask Sham-san from Petronas. Sham-san, can you hear me?
Yes, Koyama-san. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I prepared that warm-up question to you is that now not only I, but many industry people understand that Petronas seems to be interested in embarking on the idea to use that new pricing mechanism such as Henry Hub or JKM. So I will very much appreciate if you can elaborate your idea on this new trial and how you can say try to expand this kind of new mechanism, the use of new mechanism, or what is the view on this? So I appreciate your views on that. Sham-san, please.
Thank you, Koyama-san. I will definitely elaborate a little bit. I will take a little bit time. I hope that you will accommodate me on that matter. Thank you, Koyama-san, and our appreciation and thank to the Ministry of Economic Trade, Industry Mighty for inviting Petronas as part of this annual conference. As introduced by the Koyama-san, I'm the newly appointed Vice President as the Vice President of the LNG Marketing and Trading Gas and Energy of Petronas. Yoroshiku onegai itashimasu. I think I'm deeply honored actually to be given the opportunity to share my views among the esteemed panelists, fellow industry counterparts today. I think having my old colleague Sato-san joining this meeting, it will be really honored to be at the same platform with him. Fellow industry leaders and colleagues, as Petronas, I think we are one of the largest LNG producers and exporters in the world. Allow me to share some views on the current global state of LNG before I go deep into what Koyama mentioned just now. The global LNG is currently, as we know, is oversupplied with the completion of many new projects that came online since 2018. What makes it even more challenging, I think the current prevailing issue, COVID-19, has severely impacted the world demand and energy. Of course, the standoff between Saudi Arabia, as we know, and Russia, as we know, also have impacted to the business. Petronas has always been fully supportive of all the endeavors to seek to improve market liquidity. The current volatility in pricing and short-term, with due respect what Mr. Sato mentioned just now, have resulted in massive LNG investment deferment, which does not bode well for the long-term project. I have a similar concern and raised by my counterpart from CPC Corporation Taiwan during last month GasTech Summit, to mention whether enough long-term supply can be built, new energy project can be smoothly developed at current price level, something that we need to ponder. In this regard, to me, both LNG producer and consumer have equal responsibility in realizing a stable, reliable, and harmonious market. It is imperative for all industry players to better collaborate in ensuring a level of playing field between producer and consumer through a stable long-term pricing mechanism, whether you like it or not. Fellow industry leaders and colleagues, Petronas aspire to continue the solid relationship that we have with our long-term partners in Japan, nearing to 4 decades. We are honored to be continued support and the trust placed on us to deliver LNG reliably. We strive to preserve this long-term partnership with our customers by offering distinctive pricing and contractual solution in the spirit of mutual trust, mutual benefit. And I do believe my fellow colleague from both ends with the same principle, agree with those principles. Allow me to share with you some examples on how our LNG team have been collaborating with our stakeholders in providing customer-centric solutions that are tailor-made to the specific needs of our buyers, our pricing and contract flexibility. We have adopted a hybrid price formula in several contracts which allow both buyers and sellers to manage and diversify the pricing exposure against a single index price. Aside from the combination of oil, Henry Hub, and JKM indexation, we also adopted China domestic LNG price into our long-term LNG sales and purchase agreement. LNG truck price, as we know, is liquid, transparent, and used in various provinces of China. We are open, flexible, and as long as the prices are transparent and realize the mutual benefit of both parties. In terms of price review, we introduced an automatic price adjustment mechanism, whereby the term contract price will be adjusted automatically by benchmarking against market price level agreed by parties to reflect and ensure the market-based pricing. Fellow industry leaders and colleagues, before I proceed, allow me to share a 1-minute video of our new joint venture project where we would leveraging on new pricing, eco-index pricing. In line with what Krama mentioned, or the panel session that we have today on expanding the use of alternative pricing mechanism, and as presented, we would like to bring your attention to the ECO based pricing for our long-term LNG contract through our investment in the Canada project that will come on, inshallah, on stream in 2024. As you may well already aware, ECO is the largest natural gas hub in Canada, which is reliable, transparent, and highly liquid index. Advantages of ECO, allow me to share with you, its close proximity to JKTC market as compared to Henry Hub and BP TTF. ECO is also cost competitive than Henry Hub. Low historical daily average 80 cents to 150 cents per MMBTU. ECO also is less versatile as a hub-based pricing index, which allows both LNG producer and consumer to manage their exposure effectively as opposed to JKM, for example. ECO is a liquid, transparent spot and future gas market. The spot trades observed almost every minute, and customer can also conduct future trade of up to 10 years. ECO resides on a stable and reliable energy market, backed by more than 450 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve, with more than 60 billion cubic feet of average daily gas traded. Fellow industry leaders and colleagues, as a long-term player, Petronas is sensitive on contract flexibility to address consumers' demand uncertainties. We offer the removal of destination restriction even before the Japan Fair Trade Commission mooted it. Petronas has been upscaling our operational flexibility to introduce customer-centric solutions such as LNG ISO tanks, ship-to-ship transfer, small parcel deliveries in order to meet buyers' requirements, while resolving their pain points. Fellow industry leaders and colleagues, Petronas growth since its establishment was achieved through the support and collaboration of our ardent Japanese partners, from financially, technically, and commercially, to the offtake of our products. The first of our product, the first project, everything is Japanese in. Therefore, I cannot stress enough on the importance of strong industry collaboration to ensure that we strive in the new landscape where we all are operating in today. As such, I would like to urge both LNG consumers and producers to adhere to the collaboration spirit of mutual trust, mutual benefit, and mutual respect that will preserve our long-lasting relationship. In line with our statement of purpose of Petronas, for a progressive energy and solution partner in reaching life of a sustainable future, not only we are here to achieve positive business results, we are also collectively responsible to build a beautiful world, a sustainable future, with LNG as our cleanest burning fossil fuel. Nevertheless, all these endeavors will not bear fruit without a sustainable pricing mechanism. The harmonious LNG market cannot solely depend on spot prices to make for extensive capital investment. Different projects, different economics. The mixture and diversified approach to pricing mechanism is essential to balance the ecosystem. Before I end my speech, fellow colleagues, allow me to recap briefly what I have highlighted earlier. Petronas is an established player, and we have been adopting alternative pricing index as part of our customer-centric solution. We seek your support to expand the usage of ECO as a new pricing mechanism due to its cost competitiveness, liquidity, and proximity to key markets that will ultimately benefit us all. In closing, I wish to extend my deepest appreciation to the organizer, Warmup and team, for providing the platform today for the industry to share our views. The experiences, despite not being able to see each other physically, the platform today to see some of the old colleagues is a key example on how we can pivot from tradition to the new norm while still achieving progress together. I thank you, and go seisho. Arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you.
Samson, thank you very much indeed for sharing your views on this important topic. And it's very impressive to understand that Petronas is actively responding to the changing market environment You touched upon numbers of important issues at the hybrid pricing, automated price adjustment, and contract flexibility. Thank you very much indeed. And now I'd like to ask Tsugaru-san for your views. And warm-up question to you is very simple. Now we understand that you have concluded LNG sales transaction using the JKM. Please share your views on this, how you expect on that new pricing mechanism for your business, please.
Okay, thank you, Koyama-san, for your introduction and question. And I also thank METI to invite me to be a part of this panel. And first, I have to apologize because I am the only one without tie today, simply because I just wanted to follow METI's dress code. That's it. And yes, we as Diamond Gas International have recently concluded a number of JKM-based time transactions, and we are receiving more and more inquiries for transactions based on JKM. And to better answer your question, I have prepared a few slides. Can I have my presentation, please? As a principle, we support the evolution of LNG pricing structure, which could contribute to the growth of global LNG trade. Because LNG pricing is critical to allow LNG penetration and sustainable demand growth in Asia, displacing coal and petroleum products. And if we look back at the history of natural gas trade, the so-called netback market value concept against alternative fuels, more specifically oil-linked pricing itself, actually functioned very well to develop the gas market initially. For producers, the price of gas needed to be competitive enough to persuade their customers to switch to gas. And also, the price needed to be attractive enough to compensate suppliers for the loss of oil market. And it worked very well for customers too. However, as the exposures of gas in the stationary energy sector increases, the original rationale for oil-linked price linkage began to break down in Northwest Europe and in North America. Therefore, I think it is natural to expect for gas pricing in Asia to follow what happened in Europe and North America as gas gains greater market penetration. And also, as a near-term solution, we believe that JKM has a good potential as it has been increasingly accepted in the market, with both physical and financial liquidity growing. And with that said, let's look at the size of each regional gas market to see why we believe gas-on-gas pricing can be developed in Asia in near future. This slide shows you ballpark idea in terms of the size of each major gas market. The numbers on this slide are in million tons per annum in LNG equivalent. And as you are familiar, North America is by far the largest single gas market in the world, which is north of about 700 million tons, while the European market is just less than 400 million tons as of 2019. On the other hand, in Asia, while the total natural gas demand is more than 300 million, in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and China. However, as opposed to North America and Europe, the market is currently fragmented and is not fully connected among the countries in the region. However, we all know that in China, the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange, or SHPGX, started the trial run of its online international energy trading platform a few months ago, and is opening up a way for the China market to connect to the global energy market. If the China market gradually connects with the global energy market, and with the expectation that JKTC market will grow to over 600 million in 2040, I think there is a sufficient basis in this part of the world to develop gas-on-gas pricing, similar to today's Northwest Europe and North America, And to conclude, I would like to highlight a few key issues for Asia to develop gas-on-gas pricing. First, while JKM started functioning as a gas-on-gas index in Asia, it is still at an early stage of development. The market should support the growth and improvement of JKM, And we need more active participation of producers and consumers in order to increase liquidity of Platts MOC, for example. Second, while I speak from a macro viewpoint, at the front line of the LNG marketing, we need to look at varying needs in each market. For instance, in the emerging market, where gas is going to replace petroleum products, oil-linked pricing might be preferred for easier comparison with alternative fuels, as was in the past in the matured market. Or Henry Hub-linked price might also be preferred for its less volatile nature, because in some emerging markets where the downstream electricity tariff is fixed. Last but not least, I would like to emphasize that if JKM is referenced in the term contracts for new supply project, there needs to be a protection for producers, such as, for example, floor pricing. Such protection could provide producers an incentive and confidence to make investment, regardless of commodity market cyclicality. Despite the downturn caused by COVID-19, we still see robust demand growth potential and increasing functions of natural gas in Asia. To support it, we need robust growth of LNG supply as well. The more we have liquid supply, the more liquidity being created in the market. That reduces volatility, which we believe is beneficial for both producers and consumers. Thank you for your attention.
Garrison, thank you very much indeed for your insightful remarks. It's always very good to learn from the lesson from the history or lesson from the different part of the world. You pointed out what happened in Europe and what happened in the United States. Now that Asia may following that past development in these two major gas markets. But I think that to follow up that the US and the European experience, we need to learn, and again, what lesson that we should learn from these two markets. Thank you very much indeed. And now I'd like to invite Vivier-san. Vivier-san, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. No
okay, thank you very much indeed for joining today. And I'd like to ask for your presentation, and the warm-up question to you is again that the pricing and the total that the LNG purchase contract with Tellurian with pricing linkage to JKM. So can you elaborate what happened and what your views on these new challenges or new trial? Floor is yours, Vivier-san.
I think it gives a good example, the contract that you're showing and that you're mentioning of the diversity of contracts that we have today when we deal with both purchases and sales to end user. And I think the oil-based formula, I think it was reminded earlier, makes sense in some markets. I think definitely the complexity, the increasing complexity of our LNG market means that both Henry Hub, both JKM, both European indices and oil need to complement each other in terms of what we can offer to both producers and to end users and consumers. And I think this is a good example of what a price mechanism should provide to the market. And maybe let me elaborate maybe in 3 points what is our view on those price mechanisms and the latest evolutions we've had in the market, as seen at least from Total and our point of view. Firstly, I would fully concur with Sato-san. It should reflect that the main objective of a price, the supply-demand balance in global or regional markets for one specific product. And I must admit, the industry has moved a long way, and we have now clearly 3 indices, both Henry Hub, both TTF, now overtaking NBP, and an emerging JKM market, which are liquid enough so that we have visibility of the supply-demand balance on each regional market, at least on the demand side. we all know JKM has increased substantially its volumes, and we've moved from 9.5 million ton in 2017 to more than 80 million ton year to date in 2020. And this goes hand in hand with the development of the spot market as well, and its share versus long-term commitments. And we are now over 1/3 of the volume being sold on a spot basis. So it's definitely, we are moving in the right direction. I think we still need to make some efforts. We see the developments of a lot of indices, of spreads. A lot of companies are working on increasing liquidity on this, but we need to do this increasingly. Secondly, a price should allow the consumers, in particular, to deal with the uncertainty on their end user market. I think the times when you had one big buyer for each country is gone. Competition is quite fierce in domestic markets. And the buyers need to have the tools in order to keep with this, to cope with this uncertainty. I think as Total, I think we are ready to do it. I think Japan was at the forefront of bringing more flexibility, which is essential in this LNG market. Japan was at the forefront with doing some putting pressure, I would say, on some producers just to end restriction of destinations on FOB contracts. I think Total was fully supportive, and I think that goes in the right direction for this. It does create some challenges when you mean optionality, when you want flexibility. It means usually what kind of pricing do you put against such flexibilities. We are not there yet, but definitely I think the discussion between the buyers and the sellers are moving forward in this, and we are bringing more flexibility. And it does match what we are trying to do as Total, which is trying to build a portfolio in terms of being global, being integrated, being more flexible in terms of destination, so that we can answer those long-term or short-term requests or rerouting cargoes according to the changes in demand. And the third objective, which I think is an important one, that the pricing mechanism should provide enough visibility for the producers. Whatever the evolution of the markets, there are some prevailing elements in LNG which don't change. It's a very capital-intensive industry. There is a long lead time to the market, more than in other commodities. We don't have any captive use for the use of our LNG, and in most markets, we compete with domestic gas production. Let's not forget that LNG is roughly 15% of the overall gas demand worldwide. So that does create some challenges so that we can continue to have the investments which are required in order to fuel the growth in demand. I think it would be a pity that if we cannot allow the producers to have this long-term view so that we can meet this demand, which is going to come in the coming years. So we need to avoid those ups and downs. We are doing our share as Total, trying to keep a long-term view. So it's not exactly easy in the current market, I would say. But we took some very major FIDs in the past year, whether it is in Mozambique, whether it is for Arctic 2, whether it is in Train 7 for Nigeria. But definitely, visibility today, despite what we all praise as increased liquidity on indices, this visibility for producers still rests largely, not entirely, but largely on oil formulas at the moment. As a conclusion, I would say that definitely we have made a lot of progress in increasing the visibility of price indices for gas-to-gas competition. That's very good. I think we can maybe be equally optimistic for the next steps. Shipping, maybe. A nice shipping market would help to play and to restore a supply-demand balance in each regional basin. I would say as well, maybe pricing the CO2 impact of our cargoes with a liquid market that would help maybe offering end users a tool to compete with more polluting fuels on their domestic base. But I think we can only remain optimistic of our industry and the growing share of LNG in the overall energy balance. Thank you.
Vivia-san, thank you very much again for your very enlightening presentation or speech. And you mentioned that pricing need to address several important challenges, including that given the fact that LNG industry features that large-scale initial investment, the capital cost recovery is one of the key issues. And of course, that the sound development of LNG market in Asia, I think that we need to really pursue that sustainable and desirable pricing for both producer and consumer. That's the aim of today's discussion. Thank you very much indeed. And lastly, and not least, but I'd like to invite Feigin-san for your first remarks. And my first warm-up question to you, Feigin-san, is now we are now seeing that large flow of US LNG into Asian market. So we already understand that US LNG is trying to address that diversified needs in Asia. So in this respect, what do you think about that attractiveness or competitiveness of LNG exported from United States, and with, in particular, that pricing of using that Henry Hub as a benchmark? Feigin-san, floor is yours.
Thank you, Koyama-san, and thank you to Meti for having us. The challenge of being last, even if not least, is following such a distinguished panel that has covered so many topics so aptly. Perhaps I could ask you to bring up the Cheniere slides, and it's actually just the one slide, and I will speak to that as I address your question and make some points from the vantage point of Cheniere and the honor of representing not only Cheniere as its chief commercial officer, but also US LNG. If you could bring up the Cheniere slides, please. Please go to the second slide in the presentation past the safe harbor statement. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. So obviously the Producer Consumer Conference is unparalleled as an opportunity for buyers and sellers to exchange exactly the views that we've been talking about on important topics like price discovery and trying to find the right balance between meeting the needs of both sides of the equation. It is a critical meeting for the industry, and we are very honored to be a part of it. We'd like to contribute to this discussion and give some thoughts on the role and impact of US LNG on industry evolution and price discovery, and what we term the joint buyer-seller journey on the road to LNG commoditization, and of course the incorporation in that of an Asian price marker. I'd like to broadly make 4 points. Number one, US LNG really in large volume has only been on the scene for not even 5 years. At any scale, at least, from the lower 48. And we believe it's been responsible for driving some fundamental changes in terms of the flexibility, liquidity, and price transparency into the industry. And all of that is helping to find the right solutions for buyers and sellers as we meet these ever-changing needs and challenges. One of the ways that we try to gain perspective on this and how much our industry has changed is coincident with our esteemed industry association, the International LNG Importers Group, GIGMO, and how it has redefined what it means to have short-term volumes. Before US LNG came along, the definition of short-term volumes that GIGMO was using was contracts that were inside of 5 years, inside of 4 years, I'm sorry. And since the concurrent introduction of US LNG in early 2016 until now, that definition itself has changed. And as has already been addressed by Vivier-san and others, true liquidity has emerged. And now almost 30% of the volume in 2019 was transacted in what we would describe as true spot market transactions of less than 90 days, almost 100 million tons. So this is just a simple illustration of how much flexibility and liquidity has been introduced into the system, and we think that that genie is out of the bottle and will continue to play a major role. Second, although recent changes have been rapid, there's still an evolutionary journey between producers and consumers. And we at Cheniere, as a dedicated liquefaction service provider, are very proud of the role and the story of US LNG as a commercial innovator in general. We were the first to offer fully destination-free FOB cargoes, the first to offer a transparent Henry Hub Plus pricing, and the first from the US Lower 48 to offer DES volumes. And more importantly, and more responsive to the question in general, we were the first company to create and embed JKM pricing in the US into our integrated production marketing, or IPM contracts that we've entered into with US producers. But all that said, we're still readily acknowledge that this evolution is done in lockstep with our counterparties, and we would not be able to advance and commercially innovate without having the consumers at that table. Third, considering that, is it possible that we'll see creation of long-term contracts based on Asian spot pricing that can support supply, project development, and capacity growth? And this is, again, a topic that has been addressed already by my fellow panelists. And we contribute to that, the short answer of yes. Long-term contracts that incorporate Asian spot prices have already been consummated, and Vivier-san has commented on what Total has been doing, and our IPM contracts are a prime example. However, the challenge remains overall LNG market liquidity and market access, and a track record for the spot prices that would provide confidence to investors that they will receive a suitable return on their capital investment to these very large, very capital-intensive projects. As a liquefaction service provider, we, of course, need a cost-competitive, transparent, and fair liquefaction fee to cover our capital investment. As we've developed this IPM scheme, we did have the opportunity to work with North American natural gas producers and Asian customers to continue to bridge that gap and find the useful next steps, and we will continue to endeavor to do that. And finally, being responsive to your specific question of the attractiveness of LNG exported from the U.S. and LNG sales contracts that meet buyers' diversified needs, the answer is definitively yes. We will unquestionably, in my view, have more term sales contracts, and by definition, in order to find that space that bridges the gap between the buyer's needs and the seller's requirements, we will be responsive to our counterparties' needs. We do pride ourselves on understanding and responding to those needs, and have 20 of these long-term partners to show for it, as we've outlined over this commercial evolution. And in terms of the attractiveness of US LNG at its most general and most basic level, I guess there are two components to it. At the core, it is a commercial offering that is transparent. It's already been talked about, the relative stability of Henry Hub and other index-based prices. It's obviously a way to diversify the portfolio away from oil indexation. It is secure, affordable, reliable, and definitionally flexible. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, again, the fact that we will continue to innovate and continue to partner with our customers as we move down this journey. So we look forward to continuing that. We view the Producer-Consumer Conference as really the preeminent forum to air these issues and compare notes. And we're certain that there are many more chapters to be written. And as has been said, we think that doing that will enable us to come up with the right solutions, the right price points, the right flexibility for LNG to continue to take market share and contribute to a cleaner and more secure energy environment. With that, I thank you and turn the microphone back to you.
Ferguson, thank you very much again for your great presentation. And your words with the last slide, that joint buyer-seller journey on the road to commoditization and Asian pricing index. It's a very good keyword. It's very encouraging. Thank you very much. And also, I believe that US LNG is before and after US LNG, it's completely different. that in particular Asian market, that the US LNG's role is really revolutionary from my viewpoint. I do really appreciate that this revolutionary movement can continue to change the Asian market for the direction that both buyer and seller can benefit from the prosperity of the LNG market in Asia. And thank you very much. And now that we have finished the first round of the panel discussion with respective presentation, and I learned that most of the panelists pointed out that market-based pricing is now coming. And my question based on this is, probably it is true that now we are seeing the increasing larger share of new pricing-based contract or LNG business in Asia. But for example, Sato-san emphasized that we need to promote this change. And Tsugaru-san pointed out that we are now following that US or European experience in the past. So my question is, what we actually need, what is necessary for us as a kind of next step or actual concrete step towards the desirable or sustainable change in the pricing mechanism? And if I may, I'd like to ask Tsugaru-san and Sato-san, and followed by the panelists from Sham-san, Vivier-san, and Feigin-san. But firstly, I'd like to ask Tsugaru-san and Sato-san. And because of the time, I appreciate that if you can speak very in a brief manner, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes each. So can I invite Tsugaru-san?
Thank you, Koyama-san. Okay. As I noted in my presentation, we see JKM should be working as a near-term, short-term solution. However, there are also areas that JKM itself need to be improved, and areas that we industry participants need to support evolution of JKM. For example, I would like to encourage more NOCs, IOCs, and end users to trade more volume at Platts MOC, for example. And on JKM Platts side, there are concerns around transparency and fairness in its price assessment. For example, I would like to suggest Platts to consider including a future contract in their JKM price assessment, for example. Thank you.
Tsugaru-san, thank you very much. It's you mentioned that it's a more near-term kind of approach. So I'd like to ask Sato-san, what is your views on this suggestion? And may I ask, is there any pathway that we need to pursue for the long-term solution?
Thank you, Koyama-san. I think the key issue, key message is coming from Feigin-san's presentation. Both seller and buyer have to go the journey together to introduce a market index. It's a very important message, I think. So the spirits, how to introduce such kind of the index to our industry, to our market, is very important. Without that, no motivation at all. And of course, if we can share such kind of the spirits, we should introduce such kind of the index, put aside the designing of index, but not only for new contract, but also even in existing contract, we should revise our existing pricing formula. Of course, the current market situation is very headache for the suppliers because of the very low price level, lower than our expectation. I don't want to mislead that under such situation, buyer side would like to introduce a market index. That is very long message. So we should take journey together, what is the best? What is the better for our industry?
Thank you very much, Sato-san. Is there any comment from Feigin-san or Vivier-san or Sham-san on this matter? Sato-san mentioned that joint journey is very important. So is there any comment from Feigin-san?
Thank you. Absolutely. What we've been talking about is a fairly dramatic improvement in price discovery and liquidity in the LNG markets. And those are absolutely key building blocks and key tools for us to work with to find these mutually beneficial solutions. We know that the world has become much more complicated. We know that the environment that the consumers are in is continuing to change and is becoming fraught with more and more risks. And the supplier community needs to, of course, respond to that. The liquidity that we have today, while still in early stages, is a key building block that will allow us to find those mutually beneficial solutions that allow the producers to have sufficient comfort in deploying additional capital and bringing that supply to market, and properly risk sharing with the consumers as their business model evolves. So it is a journey, and one of the benefits of this becoming a market and a real market with so many buyers and sellers and tools is that bespoke solutions will become much more feasible than they were even 10 years ago. So we very much look forward to the joint journey.
Thank you. And Feigin-san also touched upon a very important keyword to me. Of course, that market-based pricing is always, in many cases, cannot avoid the fluctuation or volatility, which creates a number of difficulties for producers and consumers as well. So in this regard, that probably that Vivier-san and Sham-san has something to say about what is the pros and what is the cons of that market-based pricing. And I appreciate if you can share your views on this. Vivier-san, do you have anything?
Yes. Yes, I am maybe following up on the nice image of the journey together.
Okay.
I think if we want to establish JKM as a reliable pricing mechanism, and I think to follow up on the successes of what has been the Henry Hub or TTF in Europe, I think we've got to force ourselves to look at this index beyond what it is strictly. It is today traded as an ex-ship marker for cargoes going into Asia. LNG, not gas. And I think that's the major issue we have. We've got, as producers, and that's our responsibility as producers, to push for this index. And maybe it would be interesting at some point to have the view of the financing community for the projects. But do they accept JKM as they've come to accept now, but it took years. They've come to accept, for example, TTF as a real reliable marker for the production that you are going to get in 5 years in a new project. Without going into details, but definitely we are making some progress. And we have within Total some projects which have been launched, which took FIDs, with part of the production based on JKM or TTF. So it works partially, not entirely today. And that's an important step, but that's on the upstream part. We want really JKM to be a success. We need to work as well on downstream part. And we need to make sure that a JKM index is used as well on domestic markets as a marker for LNG imports and gas-to-gas competition on domestic markets. That's what brought the liquidity on Henry Hub, what brought the liquidity on TTF or BP in Europe. So we need to go beyond, both on the upstream side, convince some players upstream, go downstream with more B2B deals being done on domestic markets based on JKM, and that will ensure the success of this price market.
Okay, thank you. Sham-san, do you have any comment on this topic?
I think I fully agree with the statement we made by my colleague what this journey is together. And I think the very basic principle, as I mentioned earlier, the three principles on the mutual benefit, mutual trust, and mutual respect, and only together we can make things happen. And we can see the challenge for us, the producer and consumers. Today we have increased numbers of players that are not really involved in the whole value chain, that they are not exposed to the risks and so on. And these are the things that together we need to how to ensure. If the JKM today we want to be a reference, can we ensure we protect the investment by all the parties that to make this industry a healthy industry, that people really want to continue to invest and continue to participate and contribute to the well-being of the world for sustainable future. So these are the things that's something that we need to put our head together and challenge what is happening in the market today. As I said just now, if this thing continue like this, there will be people will be reserved to put further investment in new project, and that will all of us will not be benefiting from what is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sham-san. Again, that Sham-san gave me a very important keyword in this remark, during his remarks. The protecting investment is really important for the sustainable LNG development for the future. And as we discussed, that the LNG industry features a very large-scale initial investment, particularly to meet the future growing demand in Asia. So with this respect, how to finance the investment, how to actually secure the investment is very important. So at this point, that I have some video message from the very important financial institutions. Firstly, I'd like to invite Maeda-san of JBIC's video message. Can we start the video message of Maeda-san?
Distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tadashi Maeda, Governor of Japan Bank for International Cooperation, JBIC. It is my pleasure and honor to give my remarks at the conference on LNG producers and consumers 2020. And let me share our financial experience in three cases mostly are unconventional LNG project. First, in the United States, a Freeport project at Texas and Cameron project at Louisiana. Freeport already delivered the cargoes and commercially produced LNG in December last year. The Cameron also fully started to three trains to start delivering the cargo in August this year. These two projects, in terms of the pricing mechanism, are very flexible using Henry Hub link, and the diversification of LNG pricing formula has been adopted in these two projects in the United States. Secondly, I would say that the Area 1 project in Mozambique, out of $14.4 billion of co-financing amount, JBIC already decided and made financing in July of this year up to $3 billion. And Japanese off-takers had a long-term off-take contract, which off-take annually 4 million tons of LNG. And this pricing formula in this project are quite flexible and very diversified pricing formula there already adopted. For example, that They use a gas hub pricing formula in Europe, TTF, which is a Dutch formula, and national balancing point, which is a British formula, and point d'échange de gaz is a French formula, and Japan LNG cocktail is Japan's formula. So that these four formula has been adopted and very diversified. This is the first case that is very diversified pricing formula. So now we have a difference of the cost of renewable energy. Most recently, the cost of renewable energy, including solar and wind power, has been declined very significantly. However, they need a output adjustment for stable supply to be connected to the national grid system. Therefore, that the technologies of the battery for straight battery are continuously made to keep the lower competitive price of renewable energy. LNG pricing must be compete against those renewable energy. In this regard, LNG needs more flexible and competitive pricing formula. I think that the project we made financing in Russia, in the United States, in Africa will be a key milestones towards these directions. And JBIC has a long-term experience in financing from upstream to downstream. These are really good opportunity for all of the players in the LNG market. I hope that we will continue to contribute to make the LNG market more flexible, more competitive, and eventually, through these trends and direction, eventually we are going to make our final goal in a long-term future and balancing the stable power and climate change. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maeda-san, for your video message. I think that his message is primarily very supportive to the discussion that we are going to make. And now I'd like to invite Kuroda-san's video message. Kuroda-san's next is a video message. Please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Asuo Kuroda, Chairman and CEO of Nippon Export and Investment Insurance, NEXI, the export credit agency of Japan. This is my second time to attend the LNG Producer Consumer Conference. I'm honored to have an opportunity to participate through this video message, and also I'd like to appreciate Japanese government for arranging the web conference this year. I'd like to talk about 3 topics for the future growth of the LNG market. The first one, most important one, is the energy pricing mechanism. Even in the post-corona world, energy demand is expected to increase, especially in Asia. And energy will continue to be one of the important energy sources now and in the future. In order to further development the energy industry in Asia, the price index that reflect supply and demand of Asian energy market and linked from crude oil price fluctuation is necessary to be in the key position in energy trading. I understand every participant also expected such energy price index to be established in the near future. Next, we'll actively support projects which adopt such energy price index.
Again, thank you very much, Kuroda-san, for your supportive views. And I think that financing sector continue to play a very, very important role to have the successful joint buyer-seller journey to this end. And I'd like to ask Sato-san and Tsugaru-san to make a comment after hearing the voices from financial sectors. Do you have any, please?
Thank you, Koyama-san. For JERA or for any other Japanese players who want to expand the energy business overseas or in Japan, JBIC and NEXI is our necessary partners, I think. And I'm convinced that existence of ECA, export credit agencies such as JBIC NEXI, is our differential advantage from foreign players. And today, I think we receive a lot of key message from Maeda-san and Kuroda-san. And I understand that, briefly speaking, we should share the goal for the decarbonization globally. Of course, it depends on the case. For example, the approach should be different among the countries and the regions, especially in Asia. For example, we have a lot of existing facilities for the fossil fuel power plants. So I think to achieve the goal, the cost of the transition should be minimized, which means that how to smartly utilize our existing facilities. This should be one of the agenda for the decarbonization goal. To achieve that, structuring the energy market mechanism in Asia would be the solution before the goal, but during the transition period. It's very necessary structuring, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tsugaru-san, please.
Hi, thank you. I am also very encouraged to hear the message by Mr. Maeda and Mr. Kuroda, because their key messaging are very much in line with what in line with the direction we are heading towards. And I am particularly encouraged to hear that the JBIC has provided financing based on TTF NBP LNG pricing. I think it's a big step forward. And Mr. Maeda also mentioned that the LNG price needs to be competitive against renewables. And I think that can be achievable. However, in order to achieve that, industry-wide collaboration should be made among producers, end users, EPC contractors, and lenders. And also governmental, financial, and insurance support must be needed. And finally, I very much like to support Mr. Sato's comment about direction towards decarbonization or zero emission. Now, net zero in 2050 becomes a kind of common target in the world. However, we think there are some steps for us to reach where we want to be. And we still believe there are still lots of spaces in Asia where gas can function by replacing coal and petroleum products. By first of all, reducing greenhouse gas emission, and second, to reduce air pollution itself. And in that field, we Mitsubishi have been working on a number of opportunities to develop the market itself, where we do not just supply energy, but to invest LNG downstream infrastructures, for example. And I really like to expect strong support by JBIC and NEXI in those efforts to broaden and to make it greater the Asian gas market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sato-san and Tsugaru-san. And actually, that your remarks promoted me to ask a next question to all of you, the panelists. The question is that, put it very simply, what is the role of the government? You mentioned that the industry-wide cooperation is important, and financial institution or government-related financial institutions need to play a role. But also we discussed low carbonization or decarbonization. And in this respect, to see that the flourish of the LNG market in Asia, flexible market and the competitive market in LNG, what role that the government need to play? So I'd like to ask this question to Sham-san first, and Vivier-san, and Feigin-san, and then Sato-san and Tsugaru-san. And again, please answer relatively in brief manner. Sham-san, please.
Yes, thank you, Koyama-san. I think it's very simple. I think for me, is go back to the basic. The government can impose a policy. It's all about political will, whether they want to really drive it to make it happen. So if the political will is there, and they can come up with all the necessary policies, and getting all the industry players, as mentioned by Tsugaru-san, end-to-end ecosystem will be supporting the government initiative to push it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And Vivier-san, please.
I would just comment firstly that our hopes are for LNG to be fully part of the energy transition, and the energy transition is a highly political thing. And will be driven by some political decision. And we know that the success of natural gas or LNG in some countries has rested quite substantially, for example, on the pricing on CO2. For example, in the UK, or increasingly now in Europe. So those are political decisions, and definitely the success of natural gas and LNG will go hand in hand with some political decisions. At the same time, I would say that the traditional LNG players have been quite good at embarking on this journey on their own, taking the risk on their own. A lot of infrastructure. We were talking about US exports. We can talk about regas in Europe. A lot of increasing infrastructure has been built in order to develop this market and the flexibility of this market without public intervention, with some private players playing their role, i.e. taking some risks on the long term. So it's a mixed comment. I think the functioning of the market itself, I think, can be done by the players, but definitely the long-term role that we are all advocating for of LNG in the energy transition will rest on cooperation with governments.
Okay, thank you. Feigin-san, please.
Yes, thank you. Just building on my fellow panelists' comments, we are confident that gas is part of the solution, and we are confident that LNG, if properly applied, is also part of the decarbonization solution for decades to come. The role of governments in that is to create a stable and transparent playing field that gives us time to innovate and to move down this journey and find the right solutions to ensure that gas and LNG are part of that transition. So to us, the role of government is to have a level playing field and clear rules of engagement so that the commercial, financial, and other components can innovate and find the right solutions.
Okay, thank you. Sato-san.
So a few years ago, Japan Fair Trade Commission, JFTC, issued the guideline for easing the destination restriction. That was very helpful for the players. And we had a very serious and good faith discussion, not only for the new supplier, but for the existing supplier as well, including Petronas. So I think even for the encouragement of the market index or to structure the market mechanism, we do ask the Japanese government to issue such kind of the guideline as a national strategy or for the export credit agency if market index is such portion that the finance condition is getting better or something like that.
Okay, great. And Tsugaru-san, please.
Hi, I look forward, METI will announce new energy policy and energy mix shortly, in which role of gas and renewables looking at the reality to be clearly identified, so that producers can have the confidence with the Japanese market. And I really like to expect the same of the government in other Asian consuming countries too. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's a great point. And thank you very much for your great collaboration. Now I come to the really final part of today's panel discussion. And now I'd like to ask each panelist to write down the keyword to summarize today's your views, today's discussion. I'll give you about 30 minutes to write down the key message. And yes, so please write it down now. And after you finish writing, I'll ask all of you, firstly, to show that keyword. And 30 minutes, 30 seconds, sorry, 30 seconds. Too long, 30 seconds. So please show the signboard to the camera so that we can see. Now, innovation, LPCC, optimism of gas on gas price in Asia that can provide the confidence to both end user producer and Kurananda.
Climate.
Can you, Sham-san, can you read it?
Yeah, ultimate collaboration.
Okay, okay. Great. So now I'd like to ask you to briefly explain what you mean in less than 1 minute. And the order of the last word is opposite for the first one, namely the firstly I'd like to ask Feigin-san, and then Vivier-san, and Tsugaru-san, and Sham-san, and Sato-san. So Feigin-san, please.
Thank you. Working together, producers and consumers have enabled the LNG market to double every decade for the last several decades. And we think that today we sit at a wonderful juncture where we have the right tools, the right partnerships, the right collaborations to continue down this journey. And combined with our financing partners and others, we will continue to innovate and find the right solutions to ensure that LNG has a seat at the decarbonization table and meets the corporate objectives of both producers and consumers. So we will continue to innovate and contribute to this dialogue for decades to come.
Thank you. And Vivier-san, please.
I have chosen the word innovation, sorry, not innovation, but the word optimism. Following our discussion, I think we are all facing a lot of challenges. The obvious one is the sanitary crisis we have currently. We have had already also in the past few months massive price volatility and difficulties on the economic and on the economic front. We've got as well as a challenge the energy transition that's facing all of us in the energy industry. But today's conversation, the fact that I'm sure we can find the common grounds between the consumers and the producers, wherever we are, in which area of the world where we are today, I'm sure we can overcome this and ensure a bright future for our industry.
Thank you, Vivier-san. And now the Tsugaru-san, please.
Yes, gas on gas price in Asia, that works for both producers and consumers. Today we are very much aligned. We really need this. But there are still some ways for us to go together to find an optimum solution for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Samson, please.
We need to drive the industry. We need to continue to enrich the industry with our ultimate collaboration. Definitely, there are a lot of challenges, and we need to continue to be creative and bold to be different. So that I would like to propose for industry to accept another index in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samson, and Sato-san, please.
Hi. I think that this panel is a part of LPCC, LNG Producer and Consumer Conference.
Yes.
But this LPCC stands for the different meaning. LNG price index will lead the commoditization. That is our conclusion.
Very nice. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And lastly, as a kind of concluding remarks, my concluding remarks is very simple and very brief. I just would like to thank you very much for all the panelists for your great contribution to this very useful and active discussion on the LNG pricing. As we discussed and agreed, the primary aim is to see that the sound development of LNG in Asia in particular, and to do this, we need to work together. This is a perfect fit for the spirit of LNG Producer Consumer Conference. And with this, I'd like to close this panel discussion with great thanks to all. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for the organization.